Welcome to Teen Talk, a podcast where Jewish teens from around the world can send in questions and we'll explore the answers right here on this platform. Visit our website, jewishteentalk.com, to send in questions for future episodes. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Jewish Teen Talk, episode 10. This week we have with us Ahuva. Hi, Ahuva.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. And actually, Mrs. Naparsik is my favorite teacher of all time. So I'm really happy to be doing it with her.
So here's our first question of the week. What is the literal reason for boys and girls to be separated? Why does it sound so extreme sometimes? I don't really know how to explain what I mean, but I guess I kind of realize what I mean. So Ahuva, do you want to start?
Totally. I'm actually going to address the second question. Why does it sound so extreme sometimes? So I think that Torah laid down the law because if it didn't, it really laid down the law on this one and made it really clear. Because if it didn't, then I think boys and girls would try to find gray areas and try to break the boundaries and cross the line. And the Torah set strict rules, so there wouldn't be able to be any gray areas to be exploited.
The fact that the question is being asked about the extreme part, I think that that's so spot on. Whoever asked it, the fact that they brought up the word extreme, because if you think about it, religious boys and girls are separated. They go to different schools. They don't mingle and interact, and there's no boyfriend, girlfriends. And then, once they're ready to get married, now they're meeting their destined one. And it's kind of it jumps to the opposite extreme. Now it's husband and wife and total opposite extreme, because now it's not separate from your husband. It's really be one, be together. So you're right. It is extreme. And Ahuva said, which I thought was such a great way of starting to answer, is that the reason why it's so extreme is because the Torah or the rabbis who made these boundaries are trying to protect us. They're trying to make life easier. If you think of the Torah and we think of it oh my gosh, it's so demanding, it's so restricting, then we're not going to want to keep it. I don't want to keep that kind of Torah. But Torah is v'chai bahem, that you should live with the laws. So the Torah is there to make our life more pleasant, to make our life more meaningful, full of purpose. So there is definitely a reason behind it. And the fact that you use, the one who asked the question, use the word literal reason. I don't know what you meant by literal, because I don't know what reasons you've been given, but we'll try to do our best to answer it as best as possible, Ahuva and I. Ahuva, do you have any thoughts or?
Yeah, okay. So the reason, I can't give the literal reason that Chachamim or Hashem thought of, but the one thing I can actually think of a couple of things, but the first one is just to see around me, I have a lot of friends who are dating, who have boyfriends, had multiples. And the biggest thing that I see in relationships is the constant heartbreak, specifically for the girls. I'm not really friends with the boys, I don't know. But the girls, I had one friend who had a boyfriend, and then one day she called me up and she said she was so upset. She said, I broke up with him. And then she gave me a list of things, what he was doing that she didn't like. And then I was like, oh my gosh, whatever. I consoled her. And then a couple of weeks later, she called me and she was like, I'm back with him. And I'm like, what? For me, it was so out of the blue. I really thought she was done with him. And she goes, no, I'm back with him. And I said, what about all those things? And I said, can you live with them? And she goes, I don't like them, but I guess I'll live with it. So actually, it's a lot of sacrifices sometimes that the girls make. And also that girls put more mental effort and emotional parts of themselves into the relationship, whereas the boys don't as much. And when the heartbreak happens, the girls are really, really affected emotionally and mentally. They'll read into it more, did he say this? What if he said this? And when he said this, I felt like this. And she'll read into it a lot more. And it builds a lot up until the breakup happens. And it's oh my gosh, her world is destroyed.
Yeah.
And, obviously, but literally. But I had another friend who I saw her throwing up, and I said, what's wrong? I helped her, whatever. And then I went to another friend and I said, what happened to her? She was throwing up. She doesn't look good. And the friend said it's because she broke up with her boyfriend a couple of months ago and she's still really, really upset. And now she's like anxious and feeling depressed a lot. And so she has that heartbreak very, very often. And I was like, she's living with it until she gets over it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Another reason that I found, oh, what do you think of that actually?
I agree with you. I definitely women are created, more emotional and intuitive. I'm not saying that there aren't men that are emotional too and very intuitive, but definitely a heartbreak, especially for a young girl, is very excruciating, painful, and affects the self-esteem. I mean, can affect a young girl in many ways. I did want to just jump in and add that the attraction between boys and girls is created by God. It's very normal. So this question, I don't know how old this person is, but definitely at a developmental stage, where a girl has hit puberty or a boy has, like there is going to be an attraction between the two, and Hashem created them that way. But, like this is where the boundaries came in, where, even if a girl feels feelings towards a boy, or she, wants to hang out more or get to know him more, here is where for religious girls and boys, we have those, I'm trying to think of like a word instead of boundaries. We have guidelines so that, we won't come to experience like what Ahuva's saying, that kind of heartbreak. And instead, instead of it being a distraction from us working on ourselves and growing and getting to know ourselves and also learning and whatever we need to be doing, it really, really equips us with an easier time, I guess, through this stage. Because when you introduce boyfriend, girlfriend, and then, who's dating who and which guy's cuter than the other guy or whatever girls are talking
Such a
about,
pressure.
guys are, right? It becomes peer pressure. And then it's all about, and then we don't stop thinking about it and talking about it and obsessing about it. And then you're right. When it doesn't work out, that just can shatter, a girl's world or a guy's world, and can create a lot of also confusion. And also years later, when a girl or boy want to settle down, a lot of times like they can be comparing their partner or their spouse to a former partner or a former girlfriend, a former boyfriend. And so the way that the Torah designed, the way that Hashem designed, because Hashem wrote the Torah, right? And I want to also clarify that there are laws from the Torah. One of the laws in the Torah is in Parshas Vayikra, so straight from the Chumash, is that it's forbidden to affectionately touch individuals of the opposite gender. And I'm actually quoting this from Rambam, so I'm sorry, that's not straight from the Torah. But in Vayikra, it says like, Ish al kol she'er b'sarai lo sikru v'legalas erva ani Hashem. So talking about, it's what I'm trying to say is that in the Torah, there are explicit laws. And a lot of times when we talk about separating the genders, it might not be directly from God's mouth, like do not go to the same school as a boy or the same school as a girl. But like you said, Ahuva, these are boundaries that the rabbis and the chachamim and the sages established for us to have an easier life and a more purposeful life and an easier time. And also for marriage to be so holy and so special and so unique because there hasn't been a relationship before that.
I was actually discussing that with my mom today, and we both agreed. And a couple of other things I actually just thought of. I was talking to my cousin. I got this list of questions today that you gave me, and I was discussing it with my cousin. She's 16, and her insights were so interesting. One of the things that she said was, you yourself, the girl, hasn't fully discovered herself yet. So obviously the boy hasn't discovered himself fully yet either. So how can you ask from him something when neither of you knows like who you are and what you can give? And how could you ask for him all kinds of things that girls ask for, care, affection, gifts, whatever it is? How can you ask that? And another thing that I was actually talking to my dad, he works in a school, and he said that when there's boys and girls, both sides are so distracted, grades can slip, like crazy things. And actually, I was talking to a friend who's in like a mixed school, like the boys are separated and the girls only for some classes. And she said it is such a pressure to go to school every morning. You have to look good. You have to put makeup on. Girls, they get up at like 6 in the morning to put their makeup on, do their hair, make sure they look good, even if they're like on like no sleep. And it's such a pressure. Like I went to like from school where it's only girls. Like I just show up how I look in the morning. Like I don't even care. I don't
Right.
have to pause think, oh my gosh, do I look awful? Like
Right, right, 100%. And I love what you said about developing, like, you're still getting to know yourself. And then to go into a relationship where now the guy is asking of you, or you need to take into consideration this whole other person who's also just getting to know themselves.
yeah,
It is cute. Sometimes you hear like high school sweethearts, and then they get married. But like
it's
you're
so deep.
saying, and I've heard from different, girls and guys that have hooked up, it's complicated. It's not as simple as it sounds. And at the end of the day, you're right. We are developing at that stage. And part of that stage of development is being attracted to the opposite gender. God created us that way. And it's just waiting a little bit longer for the right time, when you actually meet your destined one or whoever you'll spend your life with. And it's worth the wait. That's what I want to say. I'll tell you, what I say to my kids as well is that there's the I theory and the I guess it's like a real Yiddish way of saying it. But the I is where you're like, I'm so free. I don't have any limitations. I'm not going to separate from guys and girls. I'm going to a school. I'm going to hook up with guys, or the opposite, if a guy says that about a girl. And then you're experiencing life with freedom and without limitations. But then later on, there could be that like, I just wish I was with that guy because he's so much better than the guy I'm with right now. Or, there's that comparison is what we discussed. Whereas if a girl or a guy is, I just wish I could call that girl up, or I just wish that, I could just go out with her, or, the girl thinking that about the guy. And it's like, okay, like I have to wait really like until I'm married. But then years later, it's like, I have a guy who's good to me, and I'm not comparing him to any other guy out there because this is the one that I have, right? The one that, and I mean, in my experience, I've heard of many, many situations where the comparing or the heartbreak, or I want to use the word, it complicates things more. But again, I really want to validate this question because it is something that Hashem created, and it's very, very normal to feel this way and to ask these questions. And it is pretty extreme. I mean, between you and I, like, yeah, I mean, it all depends what we're comparing it to.
I love that rule. I love that rule. And I think I'm gonna use it if I ever need to talk to someone about this stuff. Is it okay if I add one last thing?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
So my father, I said, as he works in the school, so he works on the boys' side of the school. And like, just to get some perspective, I was shocked when he said it. He said there are some girls in the school, like it's a boys' side and a girls' side, and like in the same building. So he said that on the boys' side, he hears the boys when they talk to him, they say, "Oh, this girl is easy, this girl is not," and the girls who date a lot end up getting the reputation of, "Oh, she's easy, just go for her. She falls for whoever it is really fast, whatever." And whereas the girls who don't really date, all the guys are like, "Oh my gosh, I want to date her, I want to date her," and she doesn't date, and makes it so much more interesting. And my mother said to me once, like along this line of, like, Ahuva, if you don't date, then you are so much more interesting to all the boys who might think that you're cute or might like you. You're so much more interesting because you've never dated, so they don't know who you are and you don't talk to them. It makes you so much more interesting. It's so much more mysterious. And that's, I don't know, she's like, just something interesting that I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. The second question for this week: what's up with discouraging religious girls and boys from going to college or university? It's a good one.
Well, I don't have a full answer for that, but I do have an example.
Okay.
I have a friend who went to like a CEGEP. She said that she went to the CJEP, she was in it, and she said she did not like the atmosphere. She hated it, the way they talked there, the teenagers, like the non-Jewish ones, the way they talked, it was awful, whatever. They weren't necessarily nice to each other. There was so much dating, there was anti-Semitism, there was a lot of hate, there was a lot of discrimination, like just in general, not like, and she said she really hated it. And she said the group of Jewish students in that CJEP literally stuck to each other, and they didn't really make friends with the non-Jews so much. And then I was talking to my mother, and she said, really, it's not a place for religious kids, like a regular university, because like there's so much dating, like there's so much crazy things going on. There's like dating. My mother actually talked about like date raping, and I was like, whoa, like apparently it happens in like colleges where like a guy or a girl will even throw something in your drink and then like knocks you out and then like rape you, like just
Right.
crazy things like that, where I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And it's not like such a great atmosphere. I don't know. I know it's like so annoying that, oh, they want to keep us all in like the shchana and the religious bubble. So I think for when religious Jews go to university, I think it's like a really big culture shock. And I think that they're just trying to protect us from that. I'm not actually against university. I'm a university myself, but I'm doing it online.
Okay.
And I think the way to go, honestly, for religious people is just online, or like a Jewish college, like YU, like Turo, like Sarah Schneer, which is also online,
Yeah.
or just like general online from like any college. I don't know, I wouldn't suggest personally going to like a real university. Maybe CJEP, because people there are usually younger, but I don't think I would go to a real university like myself. Just I don't
Right.
want to be exposed to all the
Yeah. I feel like I have so much to say about this question because I've
God.
literally gone to university, a non-Jewish university.
Okay.
And I'll, talk about how I got there. And I just like looking back at the question, it's asking why religious girls and boys are discouraged from going to college university. So I just want to say this as a disclaimer. There are Jewish girls and boys that go to college and that go to university. And hopefully we can give, like a picture based on our experience and based on what we've heard and learned of why religious girls and boys would be discouraged from going. But I don't want to in any way sound like we're judging anybody who makes the decision to go. Maybe it's because their family, encourages them to go, because there are many families that do encourage their children to go. So I want to just touch on last week's episode 9, where we reinforce the idea that every home has different standards. And I mean, I was brought up Chabad, so my perspective about college and university comes from the Rebbe, from Rabbi Schneerson, and somebody else may be brought up in a home where their parents really want them to get a degree and they encourage them to go. So we need to bear that in mind as our listeners are hearing this, that every home has different standards, and the school you went to and the teachers, how they taught, and the principal. And we're in no way saying that going to college and university, if you've been brought up with the notion to do so, and that is the chosen path, that in any way we're nixing it. But this is, at least I can speak for myself, and Ahuva, you can say for yourself, but whatever I'm sharing now will come from my Chabad upbringing. So, yeah. So, okay. So growing up in a Chabad school, and the Rebbe, there were many times when the Rebbe discouraged someone from going to college, university, especially when they were unmarried. And the reason that I learned as I was growing up is because of, like Ahuva had said, because of the environment, because of the lifestyle that they're living. And it's kind of like putting yourself into a position where you're really being tested as a religious Jew. And it's really,
why would you want to be tested?
Exactly. Like, why would I want to put myself into a situation like that? So all that being said, I was like the A+ student and following whatever was told. I said my chitas, I davened, whatever I needed to do, I did. Like, I was that kid that, just wanted to please everyone. And then I actually found myself a few years into marriage, after my 4th child, I had just been released from the hospital a few months before, and I had been a teacher for many years, but there were no teaching jobs available. So somehow, and I believe it's, all in Hashem's doing, because he orchestrates everything, I ended up in Concordia University in Montreal, which is a non-university.
Yeah.
And I entered a program called Human Relations. I was in it for 1 year. And to say that it is a culture shock, I agree with that. Like, but at the same time, I kind of see why the Rebbe said, wait until you're married, because going to university as a married woman with children, I was taken. Like there was no, I know the question before kind of fits into here too. Like I wasn't going to go out with the guys. I wasn't going to hang out with them. Like I've got my husband, I've got my kids. So in university, I did see why the idea was to go after you're married. But, I've also heard people say like, what do you mean? I'm going to wait till I'm married and then go to university with kids? Like, are you kidding me? So again, this is my own personal experience. And I was also brought up in a school where I learned that the Rebbe was against going to college and university before marriage. And I didn't really understand it. But then again, when I went myself, I was like, oh, okay, now I can understand why. So for the past 9 years, I was in a non-Jewish university. I graduated this past summer. And I honestly say that if I was not married when I went to university, I would not be religious today. There's no question, because, it's like this environment, which is so, I feel like going into it, for me, it was very clear what my priority is in life, why I'm going. I'm just going to get this degree. So for me, my life was my kids, my husband, all that came first. And then I go to university on the side. So yes, I put myself into my studies and I worked hard. But even when I was in that environment, I only went by my legal name. Nobody called me Bashi, because I felt like Bashi was like a little bit too close and a little bit too friendly. And then before I knew it, they're coming over to my house. We're hanging out. I'm going to theirs. Like it could easily have gotten very gray and very difficult to maneuver being religious. Like before I knew it, maybe we're going to a non-kosher restaurant, or maybe we're in Starbucks, but they're ordering. So it was a little bit too close for me. So for me to remember that I'm religious, and, like even the parsha that just passed, Kedoshim, instead of just it meaning holy, it means separate. So just remembering that, like, I am a religious woman. And so I introduced myself by Basha, and everybody called me Basha. And it was like this like, not untouchable, because I was very friendly and open, but it was kind of
Separation.
like, yeah. So I was in university for the past 9 years, like I said. And to be honest, I had one semester where I was there the whole day. Like I showed up 9 a.m. I went downtown, and then I came home at 11:30 at night on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
My poor kids. But it was that one day of the semester of the week. Like that was my full day. But what happened to me, and it was a few years into university, but what happened that day, which I was like, whoa, this is why they were, discouraging us from going, is that it was such an environment that like I would go sit by a picnic table or just go sit in the lunch wherever in the cafeteria, and everybody sitting around me, almost every second word was a curse word. It was just like a given that they would just talk like that. And the environment just felt like it was too much for me to handle as a religious Jew. Like, and again, I was trying to keep up with my studies, but also at the same time, while I'm learning those studies, I actually realized, hey, why am I not also scheduling Torah classes? So at one point I was like, you know what, if I scheduled 3 classes this week, that means I need 3 classes of Torah. And that really helped me also, what I want to say. So it's doable. And again, like I said, if I wasn't married, I would not be religious now, because I would just mingle with the girls. And then if guys were hitting on me, I would probably have been really flattered and gone for it. And then if they're all hanging out, like, why do I want to be the party pooper and not hang out? So I probably would end up, and then there's booze, and then there's parties, and who knows about the kosher food. So it does get very gray and very, very complicated, or very difficult to keep up the standards as a religious Jew. And all that being said, I got through it. And one other thing I wanted to mention was that, like, when I would be in classes which were extremely liberal and very not in sync with Torah perspective, I was constantly having to filter through what was being taught. And it's exhausting, but, it was important to me to find out, oh, wait, what's the Torah perspective? We had one class where the whole class was it was a whole parenting, like child development class. And it was all about same sex marriage.
Oh, gosh.
And the whole class was going to be about that, about 2 women as moms or 2 men. And for me, like with my wig as a religious Jew, I had to make a decision, and I thank God I had a religious friend, actually also a religious woman in that class, and her and I decided we're not going to that class, so we didn't. And then the following week, obviously the teacher paired people up in groups to discuss last week's discussion. And
Okay.
I guess Hashem knew what I needed, because I was put into a group with actually a Muslim woman, very, very religious woman.
Oh, wow.
She very openly and very confidently told the group, there's no way I came to last week's class because I don't believe in that. And I was sitting there and I wasn't going to say anything because I don't want to sound like that religious woman who's so sheltered, who doesn't. And I sat there and she gave me so much courage as a religious Jew in university. Like, I don't believe in that. So that was really interesting. And I was also put into positions where we did like a role playing once, and I had to be the gay partner or something. Like, that was the
Oh,
role I
God.
was put in. And I'm like, I'm wearing a wig. I'm clearly religious. It was very, very awkward. But, you know, I can admit here that I wasn't as confident as that Muslim woman. Like, I didn't say, hey, this is against my beliefs, because I was worried that, you know, they'll think, oh, Jewish women are so, you know, in the box.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did through the years become much more proud, actually, of being Jewish, and a lot more grateful that we're brought up religious, based on what I saw and what I heard and the feedback that I got from others about, you know, how they view us as religious Jews. So, you know, Hashem puts us where we need to be. And I did go through the experience. Right now, if I were to ever go back to university, I would go back to a Jewish one, a frum one, which exists, like Ahuva said, and they're amazing and very professional. My husband went through one of them recently. So again, we're not trying to push any standards or views through this episode. And I just want to clarify that this is based on my Chabad upbringing. And I believe that this question must have come probably from someone who's Chabad. But even so, I think that also, I know that also there's other sects in Judaism that don't either go to college or university. Anything to add, Ahuva?
Actually, just like one thing. I'm in university online, and literally the only people with me are like mainly like Bell's girls, like Bell's. And they said, like, if it weren't for this, we wouldn't be in university, because we don't go to university. And I guess kind of this university thing kind of made me realize, like, hey, I'm just happy for the little Jewish box that we're in, kind of thing.
Interesting. Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's neat that religious women and religious men do have the opportunity to get their degree. You know, we need doctors, we
Sure.
need lawyers, we need dentists, we need therapists, and it is very doable in a Jewish setting. I just want to jump in here before we go to our last question of the week. Two things. First of all, if you're a Jewish teen, and you want to be featured on this episode, you can go on jewishteentalk.com and just write, I'd be interested in being interviewed, and then write your email so we can contact you directly. We always get the permission from parents. And like you see, we don't use any last names. We just introduce by first name only. But I've honestly found that doing this podcast with teens is literally Jewish Teen Talk. So it's really that this podcast was created for you, for Jewish teens, to have a voice, to be able to express yourself, to be able to share your knowledge and your experience, which we've been hearing till now. I also want to encourage you to send in questions, jewishteentalk.com, and you can submit them anonymously. As many questions as you have. Every question is accepted. Every question is considered, and we bring it up. And no question is pushed away. At the same time, we are in a world which is a false world. They call it Olam HaSheker. And I was told after my parents passed away that now they're in a world where there's no more questions. They have all the answers. So I'm saying this because I know that Jewish Teen Talk has been created with a question and answer format. At the same time, there may not always be an answer to your question, and you may be seeking and seeking and you're not getting the answer, and it's like, you know what, I give up. I don't want to be religious anymore. I don't want to do this. So I'm here to say that this world is full of questions. That's the way God created it. And sometimes the question that you may have may not be answered. And that doesn't mean that there's not an answer, but it may be an answer that only God can answer when Mashiach comes. And yeah, with that, we'll start with our next question.
And I actually just want to add to that, that the people who have questions, which is pretty much everybody, should really embrace the questions, because it means that you're thinking about what you believe in and you're looking for meaning. And that's really amazing. And Chabad welcomes questions, and Mrs. Naparsik, who's so awesome, welcomes questions too. So really embrace them.
For sure. And even because this is called Jewish Teen Talk, even all sects of Judaism, everyone welcomes questions because Tyra encourages it. And actually the next question is something that one of our forefathers, one of our Avais, asked himself. So let's dive right in. How do we know that the God that we believe in is a true God? Why should I only believe in our God?
That is the most loaded question of all time. So actually, I just have an example for this. I was on a phone call with a friend who was like, "Uva, give me therapy." I'm like, "Sure." She actually asked me, like, she was telling me, "I don't want to be religious anymore. I don't want religion. Organized religion is not for me," which a lot of people say, actually, they don't want the organized religion.
Yeah.
They would rather just have the free choice that we actually mentioned before. And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Okay, fine. Do me a favor." I said, "If you don't want to be religious, at least believe in God." And the reason that I said that was because I said, "Look, I have actually another friend that said to me once, we were sitting, I can literally just picture it. It was me, my friend, and another girl. We were sitting on the dirt path in a park, like on a hill. We were sitting and we were just discussing. And my friend said, "How could it be that God is everywhere?" And I said, "Okay, I don't know, because I'm not like God, obviously." But then I said, "What if God was nowhere?" And she was like, "What?" Like, like, what? And I said, "What if God was nowhere? What if there was no God? And we're just here in the world, left to our fates, and just that's it. Like, just things that happen to us just happen to us for no reason. Just we just, I don't know. And if something bad happens to you, for example, like something bad happens to someone, we can't even say that, oh, it's God, and maybe God has the best in mind for me. But if there was no God, it'd be like, oh, well, just bad things happen to me. I must have bad luck. Maybe I'm a bad person, blah. Whereas if we have a God, at least you know that like someone's watching over us and someone has our best interest in mind. And also when we're going through something bad that he obviously gave us, we have someone to turn to, someone who's actually just all powerful. It's not like I can turn to my mother, who sometimes can't even do something for me, even though she's my mother. It's the God who's like, who can do anything. So it's kind of, I think it's very comforting to know that there's a God. And people who don't believe in God, people who are atheists and are more into science is their higher power. Our higher power is God, but their higher power is science. And it still gives them something to believe in, something to like, okay, fine, they're comforted by that.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah. And why should I only believe in our God? So I can't say why. I can say that Arabs, like Muslims, like religious Muslims, believe in technically the same God that we do. It's just a different religion. And Christians, like, I wouldn't say go believe in their God, but they pray to Yashka and they pray to idols or other saints. And I say, like, okay, yeah, go do that. But at least Judaism, we don't even need like an intermediate or like a medium to reach God. We can just reach God like ourselves without that. And I think that's actually so much better.
Right. Wow. Very, very powerful points, Ahuva. And also the fact that you brought up Muslims and Christians, a Jew is allowed to actually go into a mosque because they believe in one God. Like Muhammad is a prophet for them. Whereas a church is that they don't believe in one God. They believe, that Jesus or Yashka was the son of God and, all that they believe in is not at all what we believe and is actually idol worship for us. I just wanted to mention that. I also want to tell our listeners that if they want to hear more about this topic, which I started to discuss with my daughter in episode 6, you can listen to that episode 6. And this is a great question, and it builds on that one too, that we discussed there. So actually Avram Avinu, Abraham, our forefather, he had this question. So whoever sent this in is, definitely taking walking in our forefathers' footsteps. And Avram asked, I wonder who created the world? And then he went around and tried to discover it. So for him, he discovered God because he realized, okay, it can't be the trees because they lose their leaves in the fall or whatever it was. It can't be the moon because it goes away. It can't be the sun. And he kept thinking, oh, maybe it's the stars, but then they also went away. And eventually he realized, okay, there must be a God. And he even risked his life to teach others that there's a God. Like King Nimrod threw him into a fire, and then there was a miracle. So God clearly showed himself as hey, he's right, I'm here, So I think what's really difficult in this world, and I spoke before about the fact that when a person passes on, now they have no more questions. Everything's answered. They know there's God and they believe in God and there's no more questions. At the same time, I also heard Rabbi Manis Friedman say that if you were to ask a child, where's God? Who is God? They don't question it, because a Jewish child is so pure. They're born so pure. Their soul is just no sins. They're pure. They will not question God. It's a given for them. But God is very hidden in this world. And even, recently we had Purim. Well, not so recently, but in the Megillah itself, the whole story of Purim, there's God's name is not written in the Megillah, in the story of Purim, because God was hidden in that story. And every time it says the word king in the Megillah, it's actually referring to God, but God was hidden. So the fact that you're asking, how do we know that we believe is a true God? Why should I only believe in our God? Is such a valid question, because you're right. How do we know that the God that we believe in is a true God? Unless we hear a baskal, a heavenly voice that comes out and says, I am the God, and stop questioning it, because just, he says, I'm the God. We don't really hear that voice. So God is extremely hidden in this world. And the reason why he's hidden is because he wants us to find him. He wants us to, he created this world with a purpose and a meaning, and he wants us to elevate everything that we do. He wants us to recognize him when we wake up in the morning. Moda'ani, thank you, God, for my soul. But he's hiding. So I actually remember when I was a teacher in Hebrew day school, it was a Sunday school, and I was teaching these non-religious children about God. And so I said, okay, God. So one young girl asked, she would probably have her question on Jewish Teen Talk. She's like, where's God? I don't see him for sure. So somehow as a teacher, I just had this great idea. I'm like, hey, let's look for him. So we actually played hide and go seek, and we went around the whole floor that we were on looking for God. And she's opening closets and doors. The kids are like, God, are you there? God, where are you? And then the cutest thing was that when we came back to the classroom, the window was a little bit open, and this girl went to close it. And I said, what are you doing? So she said, I don't want God to escape. It was so cute. That little part of the window. So the cute was that it was the first time they were hearing about God, but they didn't question it. They just wanted to find him because he's hiding. And then obviously I tried, I don't remember how, to teach them okay, even if he's hiding, he's still watching us. In the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, when they got the Torah, which is where we're coming to, Shavuos is coming up, the giving of the Torah, the Jews in that generation, they did not have this question, because they heard God's voice. He chose them as a nation. He gave them the Torah. He did crazy miracles for them. He wasn't so hidden. And so for them, it was a given that for sure I'm going to serve this God. And actually there were thousands and thousands and thousands of souls of people that witnessed that, the giving of the Torah. So when I discussed with my daughter in episode 6, we also, explored the other religions and why isn't it the God that they believe in? Because the God that they believe in was maybe one person or 2 or 3 people that saw God or heard from God. Here we're talking about a nation that was thousands and thousands, even millions of people, because they say that our souls were there too. So we all witnessed it, even if we don't remember. So when we're questioning, where is God? Where are you? How do I know that this is the true God? We want to be close to God. We want to reveal him in this world, because this question is clearly saying that. It's not that I don't believe in God. This is hocus pocus. It's how do I know that God is a real one? So the fact that you're asking this means that you want this. You really want God to reveal himself. So you could be like, maybe it's your friends that are asking, or you yourself. I've never even heard his voice. I never saw him. But that's, for some reason, that's the way God created the world. And that's how he wants it to be, where we are looking for him and we're searching for him. And if we're not okay until we find him, that's a really good place to be as a Jew. And I also want to just finish off with the thought that I have that, and I've been told, is that somebody can try to prove to you from today till tomorrow that there's a God and that ours is a true religion and he's a true God. But at the end of the day, it's not going to answer the questions, because belief and questioning is two separate things. Questioning means that it has to make sense to me. My mind needs to grasp and understand it. And once my mind makes sense of it, okay, now I'm happy. But belief is not based on understanding. Belief is based on belief. It makes no sense. And we are believers, the son of believers, ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. As a Jew, if you're born to a Jewish mom, you have that ingrained in you. We just have that ingrained belief, whether or not I'm in touch with it. I just believe that there's a God. I don't know, I can try to prove it to you, but I can't even prove it. And I'm a religious woman, dressing and doing whatever God asked me to do. So when it's based on belief, it doesn't make any sense. And I know of someone who was going for her conversion to Judaism. And every time I would bring up, like, she was learning and growing and very, very smart. But every time I would bring up like a story, like a miraculous story or something that, happened, she would question it. She's like, how did that happen? How does that even make sense? And I started wondering, like, wait, hold on. I started questioning it too. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be, her mentor, her role model. So I asked someone who was a convert and I said, did you have that questioning? And they said, there is a part that's all about belief. It's just believing. And sure enough, she didn't follow through with the conversion. It didn't work out. And I think that when we're trying to make so much sense of something that's based on belief, we're never going to find the answer, because it's about belief. Belief makes absolutely no sense. It's just who we are. We're believers, the son of believers.
So actually, just to comment on that, I was discussing with my cousin today this question, and she said, well, it's 600,000 Jews plus, there were millions there, witnesses, and that's how you know that our religion, our God is right. So I just thought that was so funny that you mentioned that. And also about the proving thing, that you can try to prove it from today and tomorrow till tomorrow, and you can't necessarily do that. Like, it's impossible. And the believing thing, my mother actually mentioned that to me today, and I thought it was like so right. And like, I think also believing in God gives people a purpose and a meaning to their day. And that's what humans really, like, Hashem made us, that humans need a purpose, they need meaning, and they're always searching for that. And I think believing in God does give us that meaning and that purpose to our lives. Like, oh, like, I have an end goal to achieve, which is to do this and do that, and like be religion, do that mitzvah. And I think I was reading this book that said that humans are always searching for meaning, and the book was about, find your passion, and do your passion in a job. That way you'll walk away every single day like, oh, I accomplished something, I did my passion today. And the book was saying most people don't have that. Most people they work, let's say, 8 hours a day, which is most of their day, and in the 8 hours they're just like, I just want to go home, I want to do my free time. And most people spend their lives like that, and they spend most of their lives working. So it's actually pretty sad. Whereas the book was saying, if you find your passion, then you'll kind of find your purpose in life. And I think that for religious Jews and people that believe in God, we kind of already have that purpose and that meaning built into our day. Like, oh, there's a God watching me, I need to do this for them, I want to be grateful, I want to thank him, and it's like an automatic kind of thing that we have already.
Yeah, 100%. And it gives us a reason that we're in this world and a higher purpose. And it's, very, very powerful what you're saying, Ahuva. Thanks so much for sharing. And I want to thank you so much for being on this episode with us this week. Thank you for everything you shared and all the ideas that you brought up. I myself, it's percolating in my mind, and it's helping me as well in my, service of God. So thanks again. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, and please tune in next week for our brand new episode.